So thank you, Andrea. Thanks so much to everyone at MMF for having us. This is now my second time, at least in the last year, speaking to you. Also very excited and especially honored to be joined by Brodie, who has contributed to all of our collaborative research projects and also recently joined the Modern Music Core team, focused on kind of the business and operations side of things. So very excited about that. Just for some meta level, I was also saying we also ask questions like tech, what is it? So those questions are always welcome. Those very philosophical, existential questions. That's what I was saying, I guess, while I was having mic issues. Yeah, I'll start with, I guess, very brief kind of introduction to music and kind of how we've evolved and kind of our goals as a research organization and why we were super excited to speak with MMF members and all of you who are here today. So I founded Modern Music as a newsletter and started the kind of paid membership community around it, focused on music and tech in 2019. It just started as mostly a blog and a membership community on Discord in 2019. In the years since, especially in the last year, it has expanded and transformed pretty dramatically. Now we focus a lot on collaborative projects and generally collaborative systems for professionals in the music industry who are super interested in technology, especially emerging tech and how it's going to impact the business of music, to just learn from each other in a very fluid peer-to-peer way, and exchange and importantly produce a lot of original cutting edge insights on where the industry is going. So we recently revamped our mission statement, make the music industry more innovative, cooperative, and transparent. So we very much believe that, you know, if modern music is successful and if the mindset that we promote is successful, the music industry will become a lot more transparent and fluid. There'll be less information asymmetry, especially on the artist, kind of the artist team side. So like very much invested in kind of getting important information about all the tech we cover to those groups in particular. Our flagship output, the output that we're most known for as a community currently, consists of what we call seasons. So these are essentially research sprints for over the course of around 10 to 12 weeks. We choose one specific emerging technology in music, and in a way that's driven bottom up by community needs and interests, we explore implications of that technology for all different kinds of stakeholders in the music industry. So so far we've done three such reports and in the middle of our fourth sprint. So we've done 2 reports on Web3 and music, covering everything from legal issues to fan onboarding strategies, to like generative art and what that looks like on the blockchain. What we'll focus on today is our season 2 report of this year and focuses on music in the metaverse. And we're currently we're around halfway through our season 3 sprint on creative AI and what it means for music. We're looking into legal issues, ethical issues, and also experimenting with a lot of creative tools. At the end of this chat, we'll drop a free trial link for any of you in the audience who may not currently be a Modern Music member. And if you want to get a behind the scenes look, we would love to have you in the community. So stay tuned for that. In terms of also like the focus for today, so we'll be, Brodie and I will kind of be jumping off each other, summarizing the very sprawling look that we took at music's role in the metaverse for our season 2 sprint, which took place from roughly May, like around April to July of this year. If you go to, yes, thank you, Brodie, for dropping links in the chat. If you go to the landing page for that report, you'll see that we covered a super wide range with this particular season. We found early on that there was a huge like educational gap or even like a language gap in even trying to articulate what the metaverse was, let alone like how to make the most use of it as an artist or someone working with an artist or working with music in general. So the report is kind of a mix of like kind of a very abstract or conceptual look at how people have defined the metaverse. I think we won't spend too much time on that today. That could be like several hours worth of conversation. I think the main takeaway is that the metaverse is it's called the metaverse, but it's actually not one thing. I think we found it's a suite of tools. It could be AR, VR, gaming, virtual worlds, live streaming, like where we are now, I guess. that allow for achieving a certain set of desired states and expectations around how we interact online with each other and with culture. A lot of themes that we found include like very fluid identities, like having multiple identities online, kind of a more seamless URL. You say URL to IRL and all the way back around because online offline interactions. So all those different like kind of desired states require a wide range of tools to address, which we'll talk about today. Parts 2 through 4 of the reports, there are 4 parts of that season. We're definitely going to focus on the latter parts, the parts 2 through 4, which are much more tactical. So we wanted to balance kind of that abstract, more abstract conceptual educational layer, which like the time horizons of a lot of these concepts, especially when you think about things like decentralization or interoperability, can be like several years or even decades. We were very aware that there were a lot of people in our community, probably a lot of you here, who are like, who are asking, what can I do right now? Like, is the metaverse relevant to me right now? How can I incorporate it into my project that I might be releasing the next week or the next month? So today Brodie and I are gonna kind of be summarizing the more tactical parts of that, highlighting a bunch of different tools that we found been especially accessible for independent artists and their teams and communities. We'll talk about fan engagement, monetization, branding and identity, kind of covering all those bases. I guess some logistical points before diving into that summary. I guess there are a couple things. So one, we have an ongoing poll setup. So you should be able to see a poll section on the right, kind of the same section where the chat is. Just getting a sense of how excited people are about the metaverse. I think the goal of this season and what we're going to talk about today is highlighting the perspectives of people who we think have used metaverse related tools to their benefit in a way that felt authentic and genuine to their goals and to their strategies as artists or creators. At the same time, like I think a lot of people in the wider public are very confused about what it means. So I'm like the term metaverse and I think it's too commercial, especially with bigger tech companies like Meta. So just very curious to get people's thoughts here. I guess based on responses so far, people are mostly excited. But to encourage you to like respond to that poll if you haven't already. Just always very useful to get a pulse on that. Brodie and I are also going to break down this talk into a couple different chunks. And at the end of each section, we do want to open it up to at least like 1 or 2 audience questions because we are going to move pretty quickly. And so anything that needs clarification to revisit, please use the Q&A section, I believe. You can use the Q&A section. That will be the main place where we'll be fielding questions on things we're talking about. You can also be monitoring that as well. And with that, I think we'll dive right in. I'll turn it over to Brodie to kind of give a high-level overview of the structure, what we'll talk about, and then we'll dive into specific examples.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here. Really excited to dive in on the metaverse with y'all. So I think this little section that I'll be delivering here is just going a bit over the diagram that is linked in the chat, and this is our community together created this sort of like Venn diagram of opportunities that we saw through our research together in the metaverse. And there's like a lot of intersections in this diagram, but the idea here was to think broadly and show the different ways that artists and their teams can move into the metaverse. And it's not exhaustive, the examples, but in the diagram, if you end up perusing through it, there are link offs to good examples of artists engaging with this and maybe some good inspirations in there. And I'll just be talking through the sort of high level reasons that you might decide to enter or explore the metaverse as an artist or their team, and the different entry points. And so to start off, I think it's good to acknowledge, number one, that this is not new. All these engagements artists are taking into the metaverse. They're drawing lots of inspiration from history, especially on the world building side. So as we all know, artists, they've always been interested in new forms of storytelling, fan engagement, experimentation with identity. There are many North Stars here. So some notable ones I might shout out. If anyone knows Bowie World, which was from 1999, the GOAT, David Bowie, of course, would be the first one in on this sort of cool stuff. Built this virtual, like it was a metaverse, and you could interact with David Bowie in avatar form on it and do all kinds of things. Another good, cool, notable one that I think everyone probably knows is Gorillas, which is a form of transmedia storytelling through using avatars to engage with their audience. So basically, the point is that new technologies associated with the metaverse, they can significantly expand the playing field of what's possible. We're very fond at Water and Music of citing Marshall McLuhan's "The medium is the message," and new metaverse related technologies, they offer a new medium with new possibilities for engagement, and so exploring these possibilities is really important. And essentially, like, since Bowie World, the tech has gotten much better, which is why we're here talking about this today. There are more accessible ways in, so I would say like breadth has increased, and so has the depth of opportunities to build and engage in the metaverse. So, kind of referring to our metaverse pathfinder, no need to have it open, but if you do, it's has sort of 4 quadrants that each represent sort of one approach into engaging with the metaverse. The first one being, using the metaverse to create and adapt your existing IP or music creations, and in this category, there are things like you can produce entire worlds around, say, an album, or mixed reality experiences, or things as simple as just using existing logos and things like that to create fan experience things that can be experienced in the metaverse. I don't know if anyone's familiar with merchandise, you might also call it, which is sort of these virtual wearables for avatars or in-game items that are a big essential thing for the metaverse. And these sorts of approaches can allow artists to create really immersive and interactive content and narratives. And I think what I'd really focus on here is the opportunity for storytelling and long form immersive narratives. So this is the world building piece, and I think this is like a piece that's actually pretty common in the media right now, talking about engaging fans through really immersive experiences where you tell a story over time and create these engagement points that keep fans engaged. A cool example here is the artists, the producers, Disclosure. They built a whole world in Minecraft leading up to an album drop, and this world was built around the venues that are the most important to them in their career. So it sort of led fans and audience members who came in through their career journey through the world building. Moving on, in the bottom quadrant and the leftmost quadrant of our diagram, if you're following along there, you can use the metaverse to engage existing fan communities and to get discovered and grow your audience and engage new fan communities. So like there are so many opportunities here, and like I won't belabor the examples or opportunities because we do go through them in detail. We will be in a second, but these are opportunities to engage fans, to bring them in and encourage things like fan-to-fan social engagement, fan-to-fan virality. In the metaverse, there are a lot more opportunities for building co-creation experiences where fans can interact together, and depending on the tools or platforms you're using, you can encourage them to fulfill quests together, or build these interactive fan things where they create merch together, or there are so many ways to go with this. But what you're doing is really creating those network connections between the artists and fans, and then creating the social relationships between the fans that form fandom communities. I'm sure we all have read and are familiar with a lot of like the big fandoms, the Swifties, and so on, the Harry Styles fans. And this is like a way of engaging fans into those types of activities and engagement with the artists that's a little more interactive. Notably, I'd also say the metaverse allows for engaging different types of audiences and newer types of audiences. So specifically, I'm thinking here younger audiences. Just like throwing out some simple stats here. Almost 80% of users of Roblox are under 18. So this represents a real opportunity for artists getting into a world like Roblox that has like 60 million plus daily active users to engage like a new core audience or a different audience from ones they've already sort of engaged with. And then secondly here, I would note gamers. Music and gaming has kind of always gone together a little bit, but there are more and more opportunities through the metaverse, since so many games have now expanded to be these always online interactive worlds. So it's a real opportunity. A recent Guardian piece recently had a stat that 25 to 30% of people now encounter new music from games. So it's really this sort of like top of the funnel opportunity. If you can get your music into games, license your music into games, or to metaverse worlds, to bring people into engaging with your music in other ways as well, in different forms of consumption. I'd also note, just on the smaller level, we'll be talking a bit about the specific opportunities here, but for emerging artists, there are opportunities to build in the metaverse. And this is a way to, start building that smaller community. Even from our research, we talked with groups that were doing these sort of small concerts in the metaverse, and it's like starting with getting 10 to 20 people in a metaverse room, and that really like provides a base layer to proliferate out from, and a way for artists to use the metaverse to expand their community and audience in a real unique way. Finally, I would briefly mention just that the metaverse offers a really cool way to experiment with identity, whether it's an artist able to expand out into different forms of their own musical identity, or offering a way for fans to engage with artists in different ways, whether that's through, their avatars, taking on different avatars. There's a lot of virtual concerts that, provide fans with maybe an avatar of the artist that they can wear. So similar to the way you might wear a band t-shirt, the artist Marshmello comes to mind here, who sort of has this famous marshmallow head, and did in metaverse concert where they allowed fans to collect this avatar and wear it as a wearable. Another artist that comes to mind here, and a really good example, and someone who actually participated directly in our research, is the artist Panther Modern, who's sort of this dance artist, and they've actually used the metaverse in this neat way to form different identities for their artistic career. So they have this one identity, JA, they call it, who represents their sort of normal, regular old, not regular old, but their normal songs that they put out into the world, and their sort of IRL to URL persona. And then they have JB, which is a second persona in the metaverse that is more of a like party hard DJ persona, and it allows them to split their identity and sort of career up into different bundles and engage different fans uniquely, which I think is really, really interesting. And then finally, just moving along to the final quadrant, is about monetizing IP. And I think we'll get into this a bunch more as well, so I'll be very quick with it. But like licensing music directly into games, one-off event licensing, there are so many opportunities for monetization in the metaverse and generating new revenues that it kind of just makes sense for artists to be playing around with this and exploring it. So yeah, Kind of ending this section, I would encourage everyone to go back though and look at our Metaverse Pathfinder. It really is a great resource with a lot of click throughable links to like sort of see how these things connect and how the different opportunities connect, and they all kind of lead to this Venn diagram center. So you can sort of like if it's your first time looking to get into metaverse stuff, you can mix and match opportunities and kind of make a game plan based on this as an entry point. So I will stop here. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat. If not, we can keep on moving. And Cherie will lead us into our next section.
Thank you so much, Brodie. Yeah, that was a great walkthrough. Just to reiterate, tons of links, tons of case studies, artist names. Brodie just mentioned and we'll be talking about are all linked and cited in this diagram. So I'd say it's kind of maybe the best, aside from like the report landing page in itself, probably the best high-level entry point to get immediately to like specific examples of music metaverse experiences from a bird's eye view based on your own interests. And yeah, to reiterate, please submit questions, reactions in the chat or Q&A sections here. So next so that was kind of like a high level overview of like what artists goals, I guess, yeah, goals and motivations to engage in the idea of metaverse could look like. Now we're going to dive into very specific tactical ways that artists have acted on those goals or acted on just like strategies to implement those goals. I'm going to post in the chat. So this next part is going to be an adaptation of part 2 of our report, which is called 3 Ways to Bring Your Music into the Metaverse. Within each way, there are like 10 different sub bullet points, but the 3 like high level categories are as shared here. Creating visually immersive content, licensing music into metaverse worlds, and then making IP available for fan or user identity and expression. Brodie, yeah, briefly touched upon all of those, and now we're going to kind of dive into very specific examples for each, covering both major label artists and independent emerging artists, and kind of also going over challenges we've identified for each kind of way to bring your music into the metaverse, and then how those map onto potential opportunities for new kinds of tools or services for artists. So to start, let's talk about visually immersive content. So I think when people think about music in the metaverse, when you see what's written about in the press, as Brodie mentioned, like the music gaming connection is super strong. And I think those have gotten the most views in terms of like streams, views on YouTube, players in games, in terms of like virtual concerts within games. These are, like fully, these are, huge celebrities doing direct deals with gaming platforms, putting on these like super immersive, very expensive, in many cases, multi-million-dollar productions. Like multi-million-dollar, but just like 10-minute productions showcasing some new visual creative vision around an album or around a tour, and connecting with, in many cases, like tens of millions of fans simultaneously around the world through that experience. Multiple different platforms, a lot of which Brodie has already mentioned, have engaged with us. So Roblox has done a bunch of shows. A lot of artists have created their own servers in Minecraft, like Disclosure. Fortnite, of course, has done a lot of immersive shows. But there are some examples, like more interesting examples that have emerged, some of which we covered at Modern Music, especially in the months following season 2, so since July, of mobile games. So I think a main takeaway for this in terms of opportunities for especially like independent artists who might want to do these kinds of deals and put on more, or like try to pitch themselves, is that it's not just the games that like always get the most headlines, like Fortnite, or kind of like the biggest AAA games. They're like the gaming industry is not a monolith, and I think there is a much wider range of games, not just desktop or console games, but like mobile games. It's like that's probably one of the fastest growing sectors of the gaming industry, and very few music partnerships have actually like tapped into that sector, for example. So just really would want to drive home the point that it's not a monolith. A lot of the most effective music and gaming partnerships in terms of using gaming environments to create visually immersive concerts and music content come from mobile. So one example, yeah, exactly. Brodie. One example is actually it's still a pretty big game, but like we don't see it covered that much. It's called PUBG mobile. It's like kind of similar to Fortnite, but mobile first. It's like a battle royale type shooter game. But they just did their first in-game concert with Blackpink, who you would not think of immediately as kind of the most aligned like artist or group for that kind of game. But you know, Blackpink, they're always trying to grow their user base. PUBG, like a Fortnite, they're trying to expand it, becoming a bigger like pop culture platform. And so they held an in-game concert, had a lot of very interactive, like um, almost like game type features during the concert. And so it was fun. It was very flashy, and importantly, it also had a follow-on effect on consumption and on revenue for the group. I think is what probably a lot of people here are thinking about in terms of like the impact of these experiences. PUBG's biggest markets are in South Asia, so in Malaysia and Indonesia especially, and Blackpink presumably was like trying to grow their audience in those markets. It saw a lot of fall on like streaming consumption and radio play. I believe the numbers were radio play specifically. It was up 55% in Malaysia and 23% in Indonesia in the weeks following that activation. Importantly, I guess it's not just concerts. I'll drop a link to something very recent. So I'm sure many of us are aware that Spotify Wrapped is a thing that happened this week. And they actually, I guess, we'll see actually what the impact of this is, but to promote Wrapped with a Gen Z specific audience, Spotify actually created their own world in Roblox called Wonder Wrapped. There are lots of different quests that you can do to get like, I think Spotify or also artist themed items for your avatar, virtual merch, as Brodie said. So yeah, kind of the range of games that are trying to create these experiences and the range of brands that are trying to get on board is always expanding. We'll kind of talk about this maybe a little bit later in terms of how these opportunities still, in terms of like these bigger AAA games, are still limited to like bigger celebrities or like established artists, of course. I think that the kind of the playing field in terms of opportunities will only expand as our understanding of like who is a gamer and what games are and what they're trying to be also expand. I'll hand it off to Brodie briefly to talk through kind of the other side, looking at more like DIY community-led approaches to this specific use case of visually immersive content and kind of what tools are available.
Thanks, Cherie. So yeah, as Cherie was kind of mentioning, there's these giant, label-led events and in-game concerts and in-world, in metaverse concerts happening. But one of the really interesting and neat things we found in our research is that there actually is sort of a burgeoning DIY community of artists and fans that are using the metaverse as a way to meet, perform, release music, form new fan communities, and generally build their artistic careers and their connections with others. And so we've talked a lot about the big platforms: Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft. What we found with these more DIY communities is that they're sort of exploring newer upstart platforms. Many of these platforms are what could be called decentralized platforms, and this sort of has a Web3 tie-in that the back end of them generally runs on blockchain technology. I think I can't remember if you mentioned it up front, Cherie, but we tend to make a distinction because this gets muddled a lot between the metaverse and Web3, where the metaverse is actually just this wide range of virtual experiences and interactions, like often in virtual worlds, and it's like sort of the front end technology. And Web3 is a back end technology. The blockchain is a giant information ledger that some of these metaverse experiences run on, but they're not at all the same thing exactly. Like Web3 is just a tech that can be leveraged for some metaverse experiences. Just to clarify that, I'll clear that up right now. But so these sort of more decentralized metaverse platforms. There's Decentraland is one of the major ones. Voxels, which used to be called Crypto Voxels. Sandbox is another one. Wristband is another one that's not a Web3 one, but it's sort of this upstart company that's allowing more open and accessible opportunities for artists to come in and build and create concerts. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of smaller artists and communities forming in these platforms where it's easy to build. For instance, in voxels, you can buy a small plot of land in this metaverse for a relatively cheap price and build a concert venue and then hold in-world concerts in there. And so we spoke with a bunch of different groups, and there are so many groups. There's like this group called Lexicon Devils that's building in voxels, and they were really interesting to talk to because they're a punk community. They're all sort of like have hardcore and punk rock music backgrounds, but they built a venue in voxels and frequently hold events that are attended by a ton of people. There's another venue called the Rocking Unicorns in Decentraland, and we spoke with their promoter Shelly Van, who is like their whole ethos is very open to like artists can come to them and say, hey, I'd love to perform, and get a slot on these weekly performances, and be given an opportunity to perform for an entire new community of people. And a lot of these sort of experiences that have been built and are being built have actually attracted pretty strong communities that come back week in and week out. So it really is an opportunity for artists to come in, take advantage of these opportunities. And a lot of these are still using that sort of, streaming first infrastructure that we all got used to during the pandemic, where it's just using sort of like an OBS stream to YouTube even to stream into these worlds. But what we've seen in these worlds and what we've heard from the people building in them is that it really does have, and this might sound weird to some of you, like it does have creates an emotional, effective experience for people. People attend these concerts in the metaverse. They meet new friends and build community. They dance together. We had this promoter Shelly Van tell us like it actually is uniquely moving, and you can kind of feel the emotional power of this, which I think some of us were surprised at that. But I think it shouldn't be underplayed how actually special these things can be in building communities for artists. I note here too, another important thing is just that there's still a real first mover advantage here. Artists can come in and build a community of super fans, and I'm sure a lot of you follow the music trade press and sort of press articles about how we're at the end of social. People are looking for moving into smaller niche communities, and so this actually presents a real opportunity for artists to potentially start building these communities. And I note here a lot of these experiences say there's a concert in voxels. There's also a lot of chatting going on with, say, an associated Discord community. So like people are dancing in one window on their computer in this metaverse, and then they're chatting with all the friends they met there in a Discord for a specific artist even. So you can, like, as an artist or manager or their team, you can really link these things and build from the ground up. The other thing I note here is just that these communities really reflect different values at this point. They really are bottom-up DIY-ish communities. They like, it's sort of the bucking of traditional individualistic celebrity culture. There's like a real focus on building shared missions and shared communities, and sort of maybe even upending the incumbent music industry, and thinking about different models of doing things. So this might be not for everyone, might be for some folks, but there are lots of opportunities here that folks can take. I'd also just note that the scale is much different at this point, whereas Roblox has 60 million plus daily users in the game, and Fortnite is similar. These like more decentralized communities have hundreds of users per day, but it does represent an interesting starting point and a way that's a little more accessible than trying to go to Roblox and say, can my artist have an in-game concert? And then finally, I would note, just monetization wise, that artists are monetizing in these worlds through NFT wearables is a big part of it, which is like sort of merchandise that is in the form of NFTs. And people come in and they want the band T-shirt, and they're part of this community, and I think that's a really exciting way for artists to build both community as well as revenue opportunities. Oh yeah, last thing I should mention here is that a really important factor here that allows for this is holding the rights to your music. So these opportunities work especially well, and this is sort of similar to Web3 music, if anyone's familiar with it. When you hold both your sound recording and publishing rights to your music, makes it so much easier to be able to just go in and perform and play and share your music without having to jump over the many hurdles I know everyone is very familiar with in here. So yeah, I will stop there, check on the chat, and pass it over to Cherie to lead us into away from virtual concerts and more into licensing opportunities.
Yes, great segue on the right side. Thank you so much, Brodie. And yeah, there's some good comments in the chat, especially around like incentives. I think that's what both like concerns some people, but also excites a lot of people about the idea of the metaverse, is just creating some sort of alternative incentive system to like just the grueling schedule of touring, the incentive system around like streaming consumption, like on platforms like Spotify. Like, how can we build financially sustainable businesses around like smaller communities or kind of more niche artists? That was a huge thing we saw in our research. MMF team, it might be good to get a sense of time, how much time we have in the chat. I just want to make sure that, because we have potentially a lot of more additional ground to cover, but definitely want to respect people's time as well. And yeah, again, if anything is confusing that we're talking about, or you want us to like revisit a certain concept, please type in chat or in the Q&A section. If there are no questions, let's go very quickly into licensing. I think on a higher level, music licensing, I think a lot of us would think of as like the bedrock of at least the traditional music industry as we know it, in terms of like which kinds of stakeholders in the industry have the most leverage and power and influence. It all is based on rights and licensing, labels, publishers, streaming services, marketplaces. Etc. So when thinking about opportunities to bring music into the metaverse, often people think the lowest hanging fruit is licensing music directly into these worlds or to these games. So this also is like nothing new. People have licensed music for game soundtracks, often to very successful results commercially in terms of like encouraging music discovery. But similar to like virtual concerts, those opportunities are very often limited just to artists with pre-existing like major label relationships, or to already established artists. And I think one exception, I think they're based in Vancouver. There's a label called Monster Cat, which I'll share a link to in the chat shortly. They are an independent label and publisher that has built almost their entire marketing strategy and licensing strategy around licensing to games and like having a direct A&R relationship in that deal. So working with Rocket League, for example, like very popular multiplayer game, to issue regular updates that like feature new independent artists on their roster in like the lobby music. Yeah, thanks Brodie for the link. This is kind of like a rotating curation of new artists coming in. And so yes, but they are very much the exception rather than the rule. I think in terms of like, yeah, different opportunities to get your music into the metaverse, this is probably the biggest opportunity to make that process easier, especially for independent artists. to maybe make a wider range of music available for cheaper to game developers, or like even if not like for cheaper, just make that process much easier to navigate. That was like a huge pain point we kept walking into. And I'll hand it over to Brodie quickly to kind of walk through some examples of challenges we found in licensing that we actually thought would have been solved by now, but for various like financial, political reasons, still major challenges there.
Yeah, essentially, this is like a little bit of the bummer area of this, because it's kind of saying, that there are still just a lot of challenges here, and licensing into games is hard. Though we expect, in the future this will get much easier, and there are a few companies. Dequency is one, BMAT is one, Create OS or Create Safe is another one, that are building sort of these tools to try and make it much easier to license into games. But essentially right now it's really, really difficult to just kind of come up to a game developer or platform and try and license into it. The real good example of this is Roblox, which for many years allowed users to simply upload music freely onto their platform. And as you can imagine, this did not sit well with many, and specifically with the National Music Publishers Association, who took them to court for their use of unlicensed music on the platform. And ultimately, this settled last September for upwards of $200 million. So it's very costly for the platform itself. But this has led to Roblox essentially at this point becoming a closed shop. Earlier this spring, they took down the ability for users to upload music directly to the platform, and they're closed basically to specific deals they do with places like Monster Cat, for example, who are able to bring their music in a really easily licensable format. I think this is Fortnite is another good example. It's a closed shop other than an in-game radio station, but Monster Cat is another example here. They're able to license their music into Fortnite because they come at it from the approach of really like their business model is blanket licensing, and they make it as easy and frictionless as possible to bring their music into these worlds. In the more decentralized communities, it's an even harder issue because they're often owned by the community. So Decentraland, kind of like Water Music is aiming to be, is owned by its community. It has a DAO running it. And so it makes it really hard to know who's responsible for these licensing things. Is it the individual uploading the music? Is it the platform itself? This is a big challenge to know where the liability sits and who is exactly responsible for obtaining the necessary copyright clearances. As usual, I think most people in here are also familiar with like just all of the standard licensing issues of clearing master recordings plus any samples. In the metaverse, you also need public performance licenses, and then you need to meet the restrictions on any given platform for content. So altogether, this sort of aggregates up to make the licensing environment particularly challenging at this moment in time. But as I mentioned, there are a few companies that are trying to make this much easier and clearer. We also spoke with a few lawyers and people working in the licensing community, specifically that are working on trying to make templates and things like that that will allow for much easier licensing approaches and the ability to sort of checklist it and make it a little bit of an easier flow, similar to how maybe licensing into television or video stuff is at this point. I'll pause here, check for any questions.
Many tabs open. Nice.
Thanks for all the links, Cherie.
I'm dropping, yes, dropping many links. Thanks, Andrea, for confirming that you all will get a record of the chat too, which is great, so that these won't get lost. But yeah, I'm just about to drop links to some of the
Oh, maybe I'll answer
companies.
this quick question in the Q&A too,
Go
Cherie.
ahead. Yeah.
So Amy, thank you, Amy, for asking this. Did your research show certain genres, especially among more independent artists, more active in the metaverse? We didn't do like a specific counting of things, but if I had to think about it from what we saw, I would say a lot of electronic genres. Would you probably agree with that, Cherie?
Very much so. Again, repeat, the metaverse is not Web3, but there is a lot of overlap in like what the top genres are. I think general meta theme being like genres like electronic and hip hop that tend to be earlier adopters of tech in general. I think that like very much translates over these metaverse platforms. That said, a lot of the most exciting like lineups, and I guess this is a case, but like for example, in Voxels, one of the platforms that Brodie mentioned, like a kind of more open, decentralized metaverse platform. A lot of the most exciting shows happening there are like punk rock, like noise rock kind of, and I think a lot of the kind of very tight knit community dynamics that we associate with like offline events in those genres, like definitely actually translate very well into those worlds. So yeah, in terms of following the money, electronic and hip hop dominate, but in terms of like community use cases, certainly there's like lots of interesting stuff happening across the board. I think, all right, so just FYI in terms of time, we have around 10 minutes. So I think we're going to kind of zoom through the last section. So next we're going to cover the third use case in terms of like 3 ways to incorporate your music into the metaverse, which is around making IP available for self-expression and identity. Brodie and I will kind of walk through that, and then we'll address a couple additional like miscellaneous meta challenges that we see, and also opportunities for solutions to be built around music in the metaverse. And yeah, again, if you have any lingering questions, burning questions, now would be the time to ask them. Definitely encourage you to post in chat or in Q&A so that we can address them. So yeah, in terms of, so what does this mean, like making IP available for user identity and expression? I think we all are probably familiar with the concept of user-generated content. There are a lot of UGC platforms like TikTok, probably the most influential one in the music industry today, Twitch, YouTube, of course, being one where, and a lot of like the content being generated on these platforms involves like users or fans like recontextualizing music, usually against some kind of multimedia experience in a way that makes sense for their personal perspective or for the audience that they're speaking to. What we're seeing a lot in these like virtual world metaverse experiences is taking that one step further and being able to almost like use music either to like kind of express yourself in these worlds, or also to like step into the shoes, in many cases literally, of like your favorite artist or like your favorite music brand. I think the most explicit examples are at least the ones that have gotten the most publicity and also the most financial success have been, again, with these larger game developers and gaming platforms partnering with artists. For example, with Roblox, they've done shows with Lil Nas X and Lazara Larson as examples, where in addition to the concert, you could purchase an avatar you could purchase skins or kind of clothes for your avatar in the game that were branded after, usually it's like an outfit in a music video in the case of Lil Nas X, or kind of just generally matching the artist's aesthetic. We've heard for some individual artists, they've driven as much as 7 figures in merch sales. And so it's, it's a very significant e-commerce operation if you especially compare that to how traditional music merch operations work. So the scale is just definitely unprecedented if we compare it to traditional merch. I think importantly, this also is like, once again, I think the headlines are the headline on these larger artists, but the tools here, unlike with music licensing, like visual design around avatars and like creating your own skins to sell, especially in like more open, decentralized worlds. Like there are tools that are accessible to independent artists, and I'll hand it off to Brodie to kind of walk through what those tools kind of look like, and I'll also dump even more links to those tools so you can try them out yourselves later.
Yeah, so I'll be quick on this, but as Cherie mentioned, there is such an opportunity here. Um, we've seen, like, especially from the big artists in their concerts, like Lil Nas X, the pink cowboy hat that's famous from the Grammys, was an in concert Verge item that people lost their collective minds over. The marshmallow helmet, and Zara Larsson, who's a Swedish pop artist, who's big, but also like not Travis Scott, made seven-figure sums on Verge in Roblox. And from the emerging side, just like thinking back to what I was talking about earlier, the Decentralands, the Voxels, these sort of bottoms up communities. There really are opportunities here for artists to pretty accessibly create merchandise and play with the tools. One, because like some of these metaverses are actually relatively technologically simple. Voxels, for instance, uses they're called voxels, which is just sort of this visual digital block sort of mechanism to create everything in the world. And they have an editor, like this simple editor called Magica Voxel, which allows you to easily, go in and create t-shirts for your wearable t-shirts for avatars and voxels. These tools are getting simpler and simpler every day, and they're really like relatively well designed for artists to be able to use them without it being an uphill technical learning battle, as well as like resource heavy. Because I think one thing we want to note here is just opportunities for artists to come in without having to have a budget that is a massive starting budget, and how to do it for in less expensive ways. I would say, Roblox also has a pretty simple creator studio tool in order to create Verge items, and I think every day this is going to get easier on the bigger platforms and the smaller platforms, because these are really essential ways to bring in artists and people into these universes and make them engaging. So it's really a benefit for the platform to make this simple. One final thing I'll note on this sort of pathway for engaging in the metaverse is just that there is as in the IRL world, there is a challenge or risk of over financialization. It's possible to exacerbate commercial pressures that already exist for many artists, to always be selling, and also to always be asking for more money from fans. As we know, a sense of identity in the metaverse, as we were talking about, it can be really expansive and allow people to grow their identities and play with identity. And on the opposite end, or like the risk here too, is that sense of identity can become wrapped up in financial things. Can everyone afford Verge? Who can afford Verge? This can create sort of tiering, or class can exist in the metaverse as well. So we're not totally out of the weeds on a lot of these problems that still exist today. I do think there are thoughtful ways for artists building, especially in these bottoms up approaches, to deal with this. Especially engaging with a lot of free opportunities. You don't have to sell your Verge. You can, anyone who shows up for the concert can get a free hat or a free T-shirt or whatever you want to sell. That you can give them your music for free. And that, like, especially as a strategy, is really useful, just because you can actually build your community that way and have people come in and join it and feel seen and part of it, which leads to them coming back and enjoying themselves. I will shoot it over to Cherie for this final sprint. I know we've gone a little long.
No, thank you, Brodie. Yeah, I think we have probably just a couple more minutes. Yeah, so I'll try to think of, I guess, how best to like wrap up everything that we've talked about. Does anyone have any questions they want to submit? Now is the last chance. Thanks so much to everyone who has been engaging in the chat, kind of sharing their thoughts. This is also very helpful feedback for us on like what most excites or motivates you in terms of what you want to achieve in the metaverse. The kind of small, sustainable community element is like a huge takeaway for me personally, so I appreciate that. There are no questions. Yeah, well, very quickly, just what is the best way for someone to get started? So actually, this is a great question, I think, to end on. I think it goes, and I think it actually goes full circle to the goes full circle to the Venn diagram that we've kind of walked through, and I think a lot of people still have open. I think, and Brodie, maybe you can elaborate on this. I think the best way to get started is just to reflect on like what you feel is missing. Like, don't even think about tech for a second. Like, what you feel is missing, or what you would like to achieve in your like creative practice and your career, like kinds of audiences you want to reach, and then like, given like all the opportunities that we kind of talked about, maybe looking at which ones might make the most sense and kind of picking and choosing based on your own unique needs. I think last thing that we would want to say is that like one solution is the thing for every single artist. I think that is way overgeneralizing like what an artist looks like. So yeah, I would say that just kind of like more reflection, like what about this most excites you out of everything we've talked about, and just being very genuine to that as opposed to just like chasing like the hottest trend or something.
I think from the smaller artist side too, it's like, Twitter is a starting point for a lot of these communities as well. Whether it's finding the Crypto Voxels Twitter or the Decentraland Twitter and going from there, and just finding the communities that sort of fit with where you see yourself, and then diving into them. I know this also can be scary, I would say, because it's, you find the Twitter and then you get in the Discord and then you ask for an opportunity. But that is truly one of the best ways in.
Yeah, thanks for your question.
I
Yeah,
think we also have another question too, Cherie. Yeah.
Yes, there are two questions in the Q&A. I'm trying to see if we can combine them for the sake of time. Okay, they're kind of related. So there's one question about who is in charge of putting together the merch or shows for Meta, Fortnite, etc. Just to get a sense of who is in charge of creating this partnership. Great question. And then how is non-crypto based access improving? I'm assuming that's about, could be either about artist or fan access, and we can address both. And then I think probably we'll wrap up after that. So in terms of who puts together these shows, I'll go with like Fortnite and Roblox, because I think with Roblox we interviewed Roblox's former head of music, John Vasopoulos, who now has since left and is now investing in a wide range of entertainment and tech companies. But we interviewed him while he was still at Roblox. My understanding, and Brodie, yeah, correct me if there's like more detail. The music function is almost like marketing for the game. So like it's seen as like a marketing department, and obviously there is a lot of revenue being generated. But I know this is the case with like League of Legends, for example. They have their own like virtual artist groups tied to their in-game characters, and they've like held huge, virtual and in-person concerts. But like the ultimate goal in terms of like the high level like business goal of the company is to drive more players to the game, and music is just being increasingly recognized as a very powerful vehicle to achieve that. So that's kind of like marketing. It's like most directly tied to like the marketing functions. And then in terms of non-crypto based access, I think, well, a lot of the highest earning games are actually like free to play. So they don't require any like upfront payment. They don't require like, let alone a wallet setup. And so I think actually, and again, I hope I'm interpreting the question correctly. I think the most accessible music metaverse experiences on the consumer side are non-crypto based for sure. And again, like more of these games are opening up these opportunities to artists. In terms of like the artist side, I think it's just like more games, getting involved, things we talked about, like improving licensing opportunities, but kind of making that process easier. It's going to be kind of on a longer time scale, but these conversations are actively happening because more and more people want to get involved. Brodie, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on either of those
No, I think
questions.
that kind of captures it. Yeah, on the artist side, it really is like harder to get into the bigger platforms right now. But I wouldn't say it's only crypto platforms that are coming up as well. Like I think of like things like wristband, or even like VR chat is one that I think actually Cherie and some folks went to, which is a metaverse platform that does this IRL to URL thing. So, you go to the club in IRL and they've created a metaverse virtual world that looks and sounds like the club. So these events are happening simultaneously, and so you can have communities like, say you have a club night at a New York club or a Toronto club. You can also build your community for that event online at the same time. And I think these are becoming more and more accessible as well. It's not just the crypto ones.
Yeah, thank you. I think with that, I think it's a good note to end on. Thank you all so much for listening and for engaging. Again, hope this was helpful. You can also, at least for me personally, I'm on Twitter, Cherie42. Feel free to DM me if you have any follow-up questions.